The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session, Tribal Employment Issues and Reentry. I'm Travis Johnson, your moderator for today's session. I'm a Grants Program Associate here at the American Probation and Parole Association. We're happy to provide you today's webinar through BJA grant funding. Today, we are joined by Ada Melton, President of American Indian Development Associates, and Donna Fisher. So everybody knows a recorded version of this webinar will be made available to you guys at a later date. So if you want to watch it again or forward it to a coworker or whatever, that'll be made available to you on YouTube, and can be found on our APPA Tribal Repository website as well. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to state that this project is supported by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. The Bureau of Justice Assistance is a component of the Department of Justice Office's justice programs, which includes the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the National Institute of Justice, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, the Office for Victims of Crime, and the SMART Office. Points of view or opinions in this webinar are those of the author and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the U.S. Department of Justice. And with that, I'll introduce today's speaker, Ada Melton. Ada is an enrolled Pueblo of Jimenez citizen and president of American Indian Development Associates, a technical assistance training, research, and evaluation firm since 1989. Ms. Melton provides services to tribes on research and evaluation, infrastructure, program, and policy development to address social justice, economic, health, and education needs, emphasizing the use of indigenous knowledge and culture. Her public service includes work as a Chief Probation Officer, Court Administrator, and Director of Justice-related programs. She has a Master's of Public Administration and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Criminal Justice, both from the University of New Mexico. Right before I give it over to Ada here, just a reminder, if you guys have questions, feel free to type them in the question pane throughout the webinar, and we'll address them all at the end. We'll leave a few minutes on this side for that. And that's all. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Ada.
Thank you, Travis, and thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful that you took time out of this busy week before Christmas to join us for this important webinar. Today, I am Ada Pecos Melton, and I am owner and president of American Indian Development Associates. We have been located at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center for over 25 years, and I am an enrolled citizen of the Pueblo of Jemez. Travis, it's Jemez. Travis is a Kentuckian, so he might not have known how to pronounce it, but we're about 50 miles northwest of where I grew up, and it's been great to be here at this location because it is owned by the 19 Pueblos, and it was an alternative to being able to be located in my own tribal community and or the community that I married into, which is Pueblo of Laguna. This place really helps me stay grounded in what we do for our people all over the country. So to help me today, though, to provide this information, I've invited a very special person that I met some time ago. Her name is Donna Fisher. She is joining us from Anchorage, Alaska. She is a candidate for a master's in public health candidate. When we met, she had just started her graduate work. Donna, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Donna Fisher, and I am a successful returning citizen. I have a long history of substance use disorder and cycling in and out of incarceration. The last time I was released was August 2008. I had a very long transition, which we'll talk about a little later on. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here, and any way that I can raise awareness of the struggles, obstacles, and successes of re-entrants, people who are coming out of incarceration and are living a healthy life, I'm glad to do that.
Thank you, Donna. And again, please feel free to ask any questions or list them at the end. We'll try to address all of them. So first of all, what we'd like to do is to point out some of the reentry issues and concerns that reentrants face related to employment. Some of these include long gaps and or multiple job changes, the stigma of serving time and or having a criminal record. Some other factors that weigh in are housing, literacy, lack of important documents that a person has to have sometimes, And some other factors like substance abuse and co-occurring mental health issues that oftentimes people go into a facility, and hopefully we hope that they are getting help while there, but it oftentimes doesn't mean that they are ready to deal with all the other issues that they might face, or that they have overcome those issues that were a factor in their incarceration. Donna, do you want to please share some of the reentry issues or concerns that you experienced?
I can from this slide right here. I've experienced a lot of them. The gaps in history, the work history from incarceration and substance use disorder, cycling in and out of jail, abusing drugs and alcohol, not having that work history, and yeah, the stigma of the criminal record was a big one for me. I know from personal experience, when you check that box that asks you if you're a felon, a lot of times that application goes right into the garbage. I've witnessed it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the other kinds of things, thank you, Donna. So some of the other things are just some of the release conditions that might be expected of a reentrant, and that might interfere with work. So
yes.
Some of the things that are really important for us to consider are the collateral consequences. Incarceration causes many collateral consequences. And what are these consequences? These are things that are legal restrictions that limit or prohibit people convicted of crimes from accessing employment or accessing housing and other rights, benefits, and opportunities that they sometimes lose as a result of their incarceration. Some research that has been done indicates that there are over 40,000 collateral consequences. This is an inventory that's been done by the National Inventory of Collateral Consequences of Criminal Conviction. And there are nearly 14,000 collateral consequences that limit occupational licensing opportunities for individuals with criminal records. Collateral consequences also include loss of work due to absences or the types of crimes or offenses that were committed, work interruptions. For instance, I mentioned already the issues with release conditions that reentrants might need to address, or that they are required to report to or to do in their lives, everyday, daily lives that they have to do. Loss of opportunities for raises, training, education, telework, and other benefits that might be related to some of the things that a reentrant might need to do. So Donna, can you please share some of the collateral consequences that you've experienced?
Mainly what I noticed was that I didn't have skills. I had a short, sporadic work history. I didn't have any kind of skills per se that translated into higher paying jobs so that I could live a higher quality of life, for myself and my children. I had poor housing conditions just because I couldn't afford it, because I was working minimum paying jobs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's really important then, some of the things that could be done to help a person that's getting ready to re-enter the community. Work inside a facility during incarceration can be helpful, and we know that some facilities really concentrate on that, but it's often limited. Particularly information that is either culturally based or tribal based is often not available, because many tribes do not control any of the confinement facilities where Indian people might be serving their time. Donna, what was your work experience during your incarceration? And if you could, let us know if it was helpful after you were released.
Well, all the work experience that I had while I was incarcerated were like minimum work, like kitchen work, dishwashing, janitorial, those kinds of types of jobs that were available, because the other kind of jobs that gave you some kind of skills were taken usually and kept by long-term serving people who were serving a lot of time. So the jobs that were available were just, kitchen, like I said before, kitchen work, janitorial work, and that. And upon release, that really wasn't that helpful at all. Yeah.
So what kind of positions were held by those people that had the long-term incarceration?
Like library jobs. The education department had tutors, women that would help other inmates, get through their GED, things like that. And also there was some administrative work that you got to go up to. People who were in minimum custody got to go up to the administration part of the institution and work in that area too, in administration.
Okay. So we also know that often people that are incarcerated are may have some poor employment history going in, and having these low-level jobs don't really help them as they're coming out. So these are things that we need to consider when we're developing a program of reentry. It's really important for us to know and understand that the majority of reentrants face the challenges of adjusting to freedom. Many have been rule-oriented. They ask for permission to do everything. When they get out, they might not have the skills they need to offset temptations, be more responsible, and they struggle with these issues being on the street when they don't have any help, or being in a community where help isn't available. In particular, for American Indian, Alaska Native reentrants leaving federal or state prisons, they're often far away from the reservation settings that they came from, or the tribal communities that they came from. So they have less access to the resources that might have been able to be with them all the while that they were incarcerated. So it's really important for us to understand the gap and the disconnect that reentrants face when they are coming back into the community. A lot of times, American Indian, Alaska Native tribal folks that are coming back into the communities need to reestablish themselves in their community, because they are often released into environments that are ill-prepared to support a positive transition. And it's later on we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that they might need to do. But Donna, can you share some of your perspectives on these reentry issues?
Yeah, all these things are relevant. There's a culture shock between going from being incarcerated, where you have people telling you what you can do, when you can do it, and how you can do it, to just total freedom. There's a culture shock being out here in society, and I think that a lot of times, people who are coming out of incarceration just aren't ready and equipped to deal with all the free time that you have, the temptations, going back to old friends, that will return you back to your old way of living. People usually do what they know, what is familiar. Doing something different without guidance, without help, is extremely hard. I think that if people knew how to do that, they would do that on their own if they knew how to do something different from what they've already know and what they're used to. The little community help with that support, with that change process, it's extremely important to have that, to have someone, have an organization, have community, have friends and families, or whatever positive people, role models in your life to help you, guide you through with that. I know up here, a lot of times in our rural places, in the villages, a lot of times people who are coming out of incarceration are actually dislocated to urban here in Anchorage, Alaska, from the village, because the village themselves aren't equipped to help that person meet the requirements by the court, the probation court requirements that they have. And so they go, you know, so they have to stay here in Anchorage, which is a total shock. I mean, it's just like totally going from village life to here, this big city, and you just don't know the resources, you don't know where to go to help. It's really hard. And then the ones that do go back to rural Alaska, you know, they just go back to the same environments where there isn't support, where some people are just, you know, are still doing the same old thing, their family, in real small villages like that. So it's just a big setup for them just to get right back into the same behaviors that got them incarcerated in the first place.
Thank you, Donna. And you're pointing out some really important factors that sometimes reentrants or people that have been incarcerated face. They're first coming, maybe they committed their crime while in the village, in the rural area, and then they are sentenced to a prison that's far away from the village, and then they're disconnected from the village for a long period of time. And then when they're released, they go into the city where they had no experience of city life before they were incarcerated, and now they're here. So they're double cultural shocked.
Yes.
Going into the prison and then coming out and then being introduced to a city life that they didn't know about before, didn't learn about it while in prison, and now they're living in this area. And so I can see the stress that it can cause a person that isn't used to either one of those environments.
Yes.
So we know, Donna's going to share a little bit of what she's been doing in research, but we also know that recently there have been more efforts to do research about reentry and the things that work. So some of the things that research suggests are that there is a relationship between an individual's status in the workforce and their likelihood of committing a crime. Research also indicates higher levels of job instability lead to higher arrest rates, which all goes back to recidivism, repeat offending, all of those things that we're trying to work at in terms of stopping the flow of new or returning people back into prison. We also know that as wages go up, crime decreases. Research also indicates that there is a correlation with legitimate means of earning money and decreases in illegal earnings. The kinds of things we're talking about are trafficking, drugs or trafficking people, burglaries, things that people do to keep their addictions going. And all those kinds of things are being reduced with better access to work and employment. Research is also suggesting that work has multiple benefits at the individual, family, community, and social levels. Employment provides reentrants an opportunity to develop new roles as productive members of society. And if we want to instill change and motivate for change, employment can be a real important way to help a person see those opportunities for themselves and discover them for themselves. Working signals change towards a crime-free lifestyle, which is really important for family members to acknowledge about the person that's come back home to them, for communities to be able to see that there's been a real change that the person has made. And also at the more global level, that this is a really important thing for us to be thinking about in terms of helping, what are the kinds of change agents that need to happen in order to help a person make really substantial changes in their lives. It also increases the skill level, breadth of job experience, and earning levels that people that are coming back home need to be able to have a better or a higher quality of life for themselves, their own children, their families, and the community. However, employment and crime is complicated by other factors. It's really important for us to understand the issues that are related to the simultaneous issues that are related to accessing housing, healthcare, and being able to continue with drug treatment that might have been started in the facility we need to be able to make sure that this is available to reentrants when they are released. And I know that this is a challenge for some tribal communities that are very rural, or that don't have immediate access in their communities, even if they're close to an urban area. Employment is only one component of a multifaceted approach to assist reentrants. So we need to know that even though a person is employed, we've got to be able to provide all of the other things that they need so that a person can reach stability in their lives and make the changes that they need to. These are all things that are needed to succeed in a variety of activities, and to help people be responsible in society. So Donna, do any of these positive findings from research apply in your life and or in the lives of other reentrants that you know?
Oh yes, I can definitely relate to some of these research findings. I mean, I came from a real humble beginning, coming out of incarceration, you know, with little work skill, work history, job history. You know, I had a server position. You know, I went to work every day, but it taught me commitment. It taught me following a schedule. It taught me to do my best work ethic. You know, and it taught me more responsibility. I know that as I stayed out and I stayed being positive and changing my life, I got involved with reentry programs and some of the reentry efforts up here in Alaska, and that was like a pivotal moment for me to go before people and share my story and my successes, and then it became more about what I can give back instead of just it about being about me. It became, you know, more about the community and helping other people stay out of jail, stay out of using substances. But it really, you know, increased my self-esteem, and you know, I felt like I was making a contribution to my community and other places, that it helped me set up for, you know, my long-term goals of what I wanted to do with my life.
Thank you, Donna. You've really emphasized the importance of having that ability to give back and the amount of self-worth that comes out of being able to give back. So I really appreciate your comments about that. So what is needed to improve employment outcomes and strategies? Some of the things that are really important is for us to be looking at key areas of need that reentrants have, and to be able to address those needs both for the individual and for the employer. Timing and sequence of interventions is really important. Again, we've covered a little bit about the interruptions in work life when reentrants have to be fulfilling their conditions of release or their conditions of parole. These are very important. We're not saying that we shouldn't be doing these things, but it's really important that timing and sequence are considered as strategies for helping a person and being able to provide those interventions at times when they are doable, reachable by the reentrant. It's really important for us to engage the private sector employers because we know that government work and tribal government work in particular is often limited by the ability of the tribe to provide those kinds of jobs. And so we're very dependent on being able to have private sector employers and to create those opportunities for private sector employers to come to our communities to provide the jobs that people need. And then to be able to help the reentrant get those jobs, which will increase their relationships with their family, increase and have healthy social networks, be able to do, as Donna said, be able to give back to their communities, to feel like they've earned their privilege to live back in the community, and also the rights that they have to be able to exercise some of the rights and privileges that they might have lost while incarcerated, and to be able to regain them in a good and healthy way. Some of the other things are preparing prisoners for employment must begin early during their incarceration. And some of the things that we could do, or facilities could do, is to conduct comprehensive vocational assessments. These are really important because, as I mentioned earlier, when people go into a facility, they are not sometimes go in with very poor work, either habits or even experience. Donna was pretty young when she was in the system, and so the time that she might have been spending going for her education earlier when she was younger, she lost that opportunity when she got incarcerated. And I know Donna will be the first person to say it's because of my own actions, but but I know that that's something that we need to consider, is where are people at when they first get into the system, and how do we help them while they're in a facility to be prepared to get out. So sometimes if these people are young or they haven't had a stable work history before being incarcerated, an assessment can really help an individual understand their interests, what work values they have, what kind of skills they have and need, what more knowledge, skills, and abilities they need. It can also help them to identify career barriers like housing or substance abuse issues, some of their educational deficits, really taking an opportunity to look at where am I going to go if I don't have an education, or what skills do I need in order to be able to work when I get out of here. And then to be able to develop plans for participation in prison-based programs and post-release vocational activities. These are all kinds of things that are really important for tribes because, again, for us to be involved in, opportunities for us to be involved in, because these are things that are possibly, assessments are sometimes strategies that are not being practiced in the tribal community, or we don't have participation in how that happens in a facility. So it's really important for us to be able to do that. Some additional strategies that can be done during incarceration is to provide training on what's called soft skills. These are things like conducting a job search, how to problem solve. For instance, I one time had a guy who was like telling me, I don't know how to get to work. He could not think about how to solve his problem of getting to work. And so those seem like, I immediately thought, ask a friend, get on the bus, do all these other kinds of things. And he was like not even having, that didn't even come into his head. Effective communication, being able to tell somebody what you need. And I know that Donna has said and shared that with me in other conversations, that it's been hard for her to ask for help for a lot of reasons. Sometimes it's because she has thought maybe I'm not deserving, or other people have said that to me. So we really have to help reentrants be able to communicate what their needs are, and then to be able to work as a team member. A lot of our jobs are hardly solo jobs, and some of the things that we really need to help individuals with is just doing employment readiness programs to help them strengthen their life skills. So Donna, what has been the most successful employment outcomes for you?
I think that, this last time coming out of incarceration, being, like I said before, the humble beginnings, being a server at a restaurant, just putting my time in there, gaining work ethic, and adhering to a schedule. And then I became I got a raise and a promotion to assistant manager, and it gave me more sense of responsibility. It gave me more confidence. It increased my self-esteem. I started really looking at, hey, maybe my life really can evolve. Maybe I can be something more than what I am and what I have done in my past. Really, maybe I have a future even at this late age in my life. I was 42. You know, so it really gave me a sense of responsibility. You know, my employer gave me the keys to the restaurant. I was still incarcerated technically at a halfway house in community custody, and here I had the keys to the restaurant, the combination to the safe, things like that. And having my employer give me that level of trust and responsibility was a really turning point in my commitment to stay grounded and to keep continuing to evolve and make better choices. It just really, you know, I made a more of a commitment at that point. It was just like, I remember it was, you know, I was like, wow. And, you know, just the realization that, you know, here I have somebody really trusting me. I mean, like really trusting me, you know, you know, with the combination to the safe and the keys to the restaurant. I mean, like, who does that? How does that happen? You know, so, but it just really, you know, I just recommitted to this new lifestyle and to be crime free and be, you know, to quit using drugs and alcohol that always ended, you know, always got me back to incarceration, you know, just all that. So it was really good.
Great, Donna. So when did you decide to go to college?
Okay, so even though I did have, I was, you know, given a promotion as assistant manager, you know, I still worked right alongside, you know, everybody else. You know, I cleared tables. I, you know, got back with the dishwasher, you know, when he was starting to get swamped and clean, you know, helped him do the dishes. You know, I just really was a hands-on assistant manager. And I learned that by watching my manager, you know, my boss. She would get right alongside of us and help us out when we needed help. So I learned that from her, and you know, my body was just, you know, the wear and tear, and I was like, you know, finally, I think it was like 3 years. No, it was like 2 years into. It was right before I started. No, I think it was early on. It was early on. Yeah, it was early on. You know, I just knew that my body wasn't gonna. You know, I was 42 years old. I just knew that my body was not going to be able to keep doing this kind of work. I was sore. I had chronic pain in my shoulders, you know, and I just, you know, I needed to go to college and get an education so that I could keep evolving. And it was, you know, it was a really great decision because education and being in college really kept me motivated, you know, goal orientated. It kept me on track. It kept me focused, you know, on goals. And I was always striving to get to my next semester to pass my classes, you know, to stay focused on, you know, what I was trying to do, make the changes in my life that I needed to.
Great, Donna. Well, you really emphasized the importance and that education is one of the main things that we should be helping reentrants be able to do, not only to stay employed, but to have upward mobility. And I've been really blessed to be able to do my part in mentoring Donna during her graduate research work that she's going to share in a little bit. But it's really important for us to be thinking about the things that she got from her manager, the modeling that she got from her manager. We've got to be concerned about what expectations employers have. So we need to understand their issues and concerns. Again, through research, we know that employers are least likely to hire former prisoners than other disadvantaged groups like welfare recipients. They're more likely to hire for construction and manufacturing because they have less contact with the customers. Donna just shared she was in a service industry or a retail sector, but there's more hiring of people that are in construction and manufacturing, which tend to be solo kind of works, but still there's teamwork that's involved in that. Again, employers' attitudes vary based on the offenses committed. Most are reluctant to hire individuals that have been convicted of violent crimes and would rather hire people with low-level offenses. Employers are conducting criminal background checks and more frequently now than they were in the past. And it's really important for us to be aware of the concerns that they have. Some really important areas are their concerns with laws and regulations. The other one is employer liabilities. With the laws, some of the things that employers need to be concerned about are service areas or areas that provide care for children, some of the health services, private security firms, real estate, and a lot of the criminal justice positions really have regulations about hiring people who have been convicted or have a criminal record. The other is liabilities. Employers can be held liable for damage incurred by someone that they've hired that is exposing other employees and the public to potential dangerous situations. And so it's important for us to be concerned about what employers are worried about and to help promote them to create proactive and good policies for themselves. It's always important to have good coverage policies. For me, is good CYA. CYA means covering your actions. And that can be done through good policy, and it can also be done through good training to address these issues for everybody. As noted, it's important to help employers address loss and liabilities. They can be done by helping reentrants comply with conditions or parole or release. Helping the employer understand what the reentrant needs to do can go a long way. And it'll help them to be able to work with reentrants, to be able to provide them with flexible work schedules, and helping them to actually meet their different requirements and building relationships with employers. So Donna, you've already shared some of the things that you experienced, but what have been your experiences with support from other employers?
Well, the other employers weren't so positive. So I'm just going to continue talking about my same employer that I had.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was a real positive. I was very, very, very fortunate to get the kind of employer that I did this time around, this last time at release. She really worked with me, you know, and I was in the halfway house for 22 months. And there were a lot of obligations and requirements that I had to do for the halfway house, be here at a certain time, be there. I mean, we had people coming in to, you know, to make sure I was where I was at, when I said I was there, you know, and she just went along with it. One of the things that clearly stands out in my mind is that when I started going to college, she, you know, every semester my schedule changed, my class schedule changed. And my employer would actually change my work schedule, which she would have to change other people's work schedule too, just so that she could make sure that I was continuing being able to stay at work and go to my classes. You know, she just went above and beyond. I was really, really fortunate that, you know, I got that kind of employer this time, because she really, really supported me.
Great, Donna. You're really identifying some of the things that a supportive employer can do to help a reentrant who's really trying to do and demonstrating that you are making important life changes, and that when we make changes in our lives, it's all the support that we can get is important, even for those of us that have never been in your shoes. So I think that all of the comments that you're making about what good employer behavior looks like or support looks like is very important. And these are all things that we should really try to incorporate in working with potential employers. I think that some of the other things that employers can do is to be able to provide incentives for us to be able to identify what kind of incentives can be available. There are some laws that can help employers consider hiring reentrants, like tax credits. There's been a lot of work done in different communities to do this. These include some of the work that the federal government has done with the federal bonding program. Bonding is sometimes confused with insurance. What you've been hired to do is performed, and that the customer is protected against losses from theft or damage done by an employee. In the private sector, the most common businesses that bond employees are general contractors, temporary personnel agencies, janitorial companies, and companies with government contracts. Sometimes people confuse bonding with insurance, but it's really something that is important, and I would urge everybody to just Google federal bonding programs and to see what kinds of incentives that they can be looking at, not only for themselves, but also to see what kinds of ways that tribes can replicate these kinds of things. Again, here are some additional incentives for income tax credit, and those are for people that are businesses that hire ex-offenders. And another one is tax deduction. So that rather than a tax credit on their state income tax, these are something that an employer can use as a claim. Another one are municipal incentive programs. And again, these are kind of important for us to be looking at. These are, again, reimbursements, cash reimbursements to employers who hire a reentrant. Although here we've said ex-offenders, I just want to point out that the term ex-offender is stigmatizing. So when you start to write your policies or programs, it's really important to use the term reentrant. Small changes can make a huge difference in changing attitudes. And so in our own writings and our own usage of words to describe where Donna is and where Donna came from, it's important for us to think about just those small changes that we can start practicing ourselves, just to do some of those things that are unseen and change attitudes. So Donna, here are some things that we had talked about in terms of support services. Tell us some of the support that is critical from justice services.
I really like the gradual transition part, especially for repeat offenders and habitual, substance users. That describes me. I cycled in and out of jail for many years, and I was afforded a very long furlough where my custody level was reduced down to community, and I was able to go to the halfway house. And I spent 22 months at the halfway house, and then again 18 more months on level 5 home confinement out of the halfway house, where I was still accountable to the halfway house, still monitored by the halfway house, but I had my own place. And then after that, I spent 2 years in mandatory parole. But each decrease of supervision, that happened for me, it gave me the opportunity to start taking responsibility for my life, and it gave me, the chance to make choices, healthier choices for my new change in my life. So that, seriously, I watched a whole set of correctional officers put in their 20 years and retire.
Yeah.
That's how many, that's how many years are we still here on?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Because my screen just went berserk. Okay, yeah, that's how many years I cycled in and out of jail. So, I was voted most likely to not ever succeed. And that furlough, that long gradual transition really was key to, my success. It really was. I just really can't, emphasize how important that is for, for the, the repeat offender, the people that keep cycling in and out of jail, kind of need that. I think it really benefits them. And then like the support on critical days. Like I remember being released many times with just my property box with nowhere to go. I had no plan. I didn't have a plan of action. I didn't have a support system set up. I didn't have anything, you know. And so what did I do? I went right back to the same people, same environment that I, you know, left. And it's just really critical to have a plan of action, a support system set up, accountability, someone guiding you, just somebody, you know, there to, you know, keep you in, you know, help you stay, you know, accountable, you know, about the choices that a person is making. And I also really, the immediate access to income. I think that a lot of times, you know, money is a big trigger for people, you know, like that first paycheck. And I've seen it again and again. You know, I've seen it a couple times when I was assistant manager. You know, my boss, my employer at the time, she was like, okay, we're going to give this person a chance. You know, he's just coming out of jail, but we're going to give him a chance. And I'm like, okay, you know, and their first paycheck, and they were gone. We never saw them again. You know, and that happens. I've seen it happen time and time again, even at the halfway house. People would just leave, cash their check and go, you know, and abscond. Yeah. So I think that money, you know, just having that plan of action, the support, you know, the support to help people get through their triggers, and, you know, just learning how to make healthier choices for yourself. Have that.
Great. Thank you, Donna. So it's important, just to reiterate, it's important for confinement institutions like jails and prisons to provide in-custody support with preparing documents. And here we're talking about diplomas, certificates, identification cards, tribal enrollment cards, helping people to gain some interviewing skills, job searches, and strategies for really evoking motivation that will help a person make changes. These are really important to remediate existing deficits in these areas that might exist for an individual reentrant. And some additional strategies include being able to help employer satisfaction, to really point out what we could do as probation officers, parole officers, or other service providers that we're helping the reentrant to gain better work skills, to have commitment to the job, and also to be able to be available to minimize interruptions and support employment stability by being flexible about how a reentrant is fulfilling their conditions of release or their conditions of parole. And then that these are all really good things that you should market to the employer, because you're actually helping the reentrant job retention, and that you're helping them to build a solid work history. So some of the things that we should be thinking about in terms of tribal perspectives are that although there's been these resources that have been available under the Second Chance Act and other Bureau of Justice Assistance programs, tribes have not been strong participants. As you can see, you know, there are grants that have been going out, but tribes just aren't represented in those numbers that much. And some of the reasons might be because tribal participation in reentry programming at the state and federal level and for themselves, because there's a number of tribes, we all use facilities, although many of them are jail facilities. We still need to be able to have the ability to develop and address resource development issues, for us to have relationships with facilities that are off tribal lands, and for us to be able to pulse the community readiness for reentry. These are all things that are important. That Donna, can you share a little bit about what it was like for you working on your graduate research? If you could share at least one question that you've asked on your survey about some of the findings related to tribal participation.
Okay, so I'm doing my final project right now, and it's entitled A Cultural Needs Assessment for Alaska Native Correction System and Reentry. One of the things that I discovered from my survey were that Alaska Native people were, you know, I had a question, and like how many of these activities were you participating in before incarceration? There was high numbers there. of Alaska Native people who were actually participating in their culture, doing cultural activities before incarceration. And then a question was asked, what activities are you participating in after incarceration? And the numbers, were significantly reduced for the after incarceration. So there's a real disconnect there. And I think that, that the tribal participation of our communities, our Native communities, to help bring activities or help support in that part, the cultural part, because most correction facilities don't, they understand, I mean, up here especially, they understand that there needs to be culture, that Native people actually, thrive when they have cultural participation, when they have their Native community supporting them. They understand that there's a need for that. They don't know how to implement that. And that's where our tribes, our Native communities need to assist the correction system to, implement that.
Okay, thank you, Donna. So some of the things that are preventing tribes with participation, again, are issues related to resource development and other issues that you can read more about it when you look at the PowerPoint. Some of the really important things are these relationships that we have with facilities. It's essential for us to build those relationships and to be able to be involved in how people are being treated and the resources that are available to them while they're incarcerated. And the other big reason is so that we can be notified when a person is going to be released, so we can be part of the preparation of that person coming out, and also that we have the ability to help prepare our communities to receive people back into our communities. It's really important for us for tribal involvement is essential to promote by assisting reentrants to reestablish the community ties to culture. As Donna's just pointed out, if they don't, they've been disconnected, and so they're being dislocated into cities and towns where their culture is not available to them, and they don't have access to tribal-based or cultural-based resources. So it's really, just very important for us to have that. If we're not involved, we can't build the services that reentrants need. We need to be more prepared to support service integration or coordination between agencies, our own agencies, federal agencies, state agencies, and tribal programs that exist, along with the community resources that are non-governmental, our churches, our cultural, spiritual strategies that need to be there, and that we also introduce and inform employers about those kinds of things that are important, and providing them that cultural education also, so that they are familiar with what kinds of things that a reentrant might need to do to regain their and establish their community ties. Community readiness is very important. Tribal governments and communities have varied and multiple needs to address, and it's just something that we really need to be able to be mindful of. So Donna, tell us a little bit about Safe Pathways Home.
Okay, community involvement I think is very, very, very critical, and I think that more effort needs to be made for up here, especially for ways that can involve rural Alaska, the villages, in the statewide effort up here in Alaska, in the statewide effort for reducing recidivism. I think that the rural villages really need to get involved so that they're better able to receive the reentrants, the people that are coming out of incarceration, back into their communities. I think it's imperative to gain the community's buy-in, to engage supportive services for reentrants. I think the more that we showcase successful returning citizens doing a good job and doing good for their community that they live in, the more that community will be willing to get involved. I'm a real advocate that reentrants should be doing meaningful community work service. You know, when they're released, I think this really can make a big difference. You know, versus just picking up garbage alongside of the road. I think that, you know, I mean, I've been there. I've been that person. You know, shame. I felt ashamed. I felt degraded. I felt like I just felt like the scum of the earth. You know, I'm alongside of the road with a bunch of us. We all have yellow jackets on, and, you know, we're doing our community work service to give back to the community, picking up garbage. It was really degrading. Not saying that, you know, that's not, you know, deserving. I mean, we got to put in community work, but I think that meaningful community work service helps not only the reentrant, but it also helps, you know, the community that they're, you know, being released to.
Thank you, Donna. So it's really important that we support reentrants in a good return home in a really good way, and that we, you know, try to use any kind of leverage we can with our governments. Some of these might be that we really help point out what kind of laws that tribes might need to look at. These could be federal laws that are applicable to tribal-based employers. Tribes in PL 280 states might need to review federal and state laws that are focused on discriminatory practices. We might also be looking at things that are referred to as ban-the-box laws, which are referring to job applications asking about a person's criminal history, and creating good policy that could support that doesn't disadvantage a person that has a criminal record or that are coming out of prison, and for us to do it in thoughtful ways. Another is just as important to provide employer support through education, through employer incentives, and to highlight programs that support to assist reentrants to become good employees. I think these are all things that we as providers, service providers, policy workers, tribal leadership, and people who just are in the community can help. We also think that it's very important to help identify employer-based benefits. What can an employer provide? These could be some of the things that Donna talked about: educational leave, the flexibility to meet probation conditions, on-the-job training for upward mobility, and mentoring support. These are all things that we should work towards, and we can market and highlight what we do as service providers that we help reentrants with their job skills, becoming a reliable employee, and that the benefit to an employer is that they have a decrease in job turnover for the employer. I just want to put out this matrix here are the differences between jail or detention facilities, which are short-term, and prison facilities. And I'm pointing this out mainly because there are differences to consider about jail versus prison facilities that imply the strategies that you would be using that we've just been talking about. So with that, we know that we're out of time, but I would just like to ask Donna, do you have any closing comments, Donna?
I just really think that I really appreciate this presentation. It was very matter-of-factly, and I like that. I really like the presentation. I think that sometimes it is painted that reentrants are victims because, you know, there are so many barriers and so many hurdles and so many, you know, it's really hard to get out of prison and start your life over and in a positive note, yes, but sometimes they're painted as victims because of all the barriers, and I think that leaves a really sour taste in the community. I like the way that is portrayed on this presentation as matter-of-factly, because we're not victims. We are, you know, we need to take responsibility for the choices that we made. And I also really can't reiterate helping the reentrant, before they get out of incarceration, before they leave the prison, just paint the realistic expectations of what they're actually going to be faced with. I think that there's a lot of barriers, and people need to know about them. Just because you decide to, you're going to make some changes, you're not going to use drugs anymore, you're not going to use alcohol anymore, you're going to live a clean life. Everything isn't going to be handed to you, and isn't going to be happy-go-lucky for the rest just because you're, getting clean. Life is still life, and people need to, have those realistic expectations set in front of them so they know what to expect when they get out, what it's really going to take to change your life. It's a lot of hard work.
Thank you, Donna. I continue to appreciate all that you do now. So Travis, I know we ran out of time, but I'm turning it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation, guys, and thanks everyone for being in attendance today. Like I said, I'll have the recording up on YouTube, our YouTube page, as well as the tribal section of our APPA website if you guys want to access it there. I don't currently have any questions, and I know we're running over time here. I don't want to hold anyone up from their busy schedules, especially around the holidays. So if you have any questions, feel free, I'm sure, to email them to Ada's email there, or you can email them to me at APPA, and we'll try and get them addressed for you guys. Thanks, everybody, for attending today.
Thank you. Happy holidays.